The Man Who Killed the Deer by Frank Waters. I am an Indian. I must bow to the laws of the Pueblo, but I cannot accept its ways. I cannot cut the heels off my white man's boots. I cannot cut the seat from my pants and cover myself with a blanket. I am an Indian. I went to the white man's school and learned to be a carpenter, but I cannot drink whiskey as the white man does, nor go where he goes, nor live as he lives. I am a man who must find out who he is. I am the man who killed the deer. To Mabel and Tony. The last pinyon knot crumpled in the small conical fireplace. Its coals blazed redly alive, then slowly clouded over with a gray film like the eyes of a dead hawk. The whitewashed adobe walls began to lose their pinkish pallor in dim outlines. A rat scampered across the dark earthen floor into silence. There sounded in the room only the rhythmic breathing of sleep. It came loudly from a woman and a young girl lying on a wooden bedstead, more softly from the man-child wrapped in a serape on the adobe seating ledge extending along the wall. But the man stretched out on floor mat and blankets between them could not sleep. It was as if an invisible hand was pulling at his spirit, pulling it out of his chest, pulling it outside the great sleeping pyramid of adobe in which he lay. There were no windows in the room, only a small square breathing shaft opening in the ceiling above. Yet he heard the October wind prowling along the walls, moaning in the outdoor ovens dotting the plaza like ant hills. From the willow thickets along the stream rose clear, deep voices. Hi-yah! Aye! Hi-yah! They came from young men wrapped palely as ghosts in sheets and blankets who had been singing hour after hour at the rising moon. Across the pastures came the sound of a little water drum, but beyond, the dark pine mountain throbbed deeper. It was the shape of a recumbent woman's great soft breast flattened at the point, really and curved like an old buffalo bow, and the beat from deep within, from the heart of the world, pulsed steadily, inaudibly, like the beat of the man's blood. Each was the echo of the other, indivisible, but they were not quite in tune. So the man could not sleep. He rose quietly, pulled on his pants. Squatting before the fireplace, he gently turned over the coals with a stick. In the faint glow, his ruddy brown chest and shoulders emerged soft, hairless, and fleshy, like a woman's, but powerful. His black eyes, big nose, full lips, and massive cheekbones were the features of a mahogany mask. The face was somber and relaxed, yet intent, the rapt face of a man who could see without what he felt within. As he waited, it came again, a long, wavering but insistent cry from the lower pine slopes. It was the frosty, eerie voice of a coyote. He had heard it thrice before, but now, with the pull upon his spirit, the cry held a summons he could not ignore. His dark, immobile face changed. It was still trance-like, but decisive. He dressed slowly and unhurried, in wool shirt, store boots with the heels removed, a dirty leather jacket and blanket. A waterfall of long black hair poured down his back. He did not wait to braid it with colored hair strings into two long pigtails falling to his waist. He bound it simply, the old way, into a chignon tied at the back with a strip of dirty cloth. Softly, so as not to awaken wife and children, he glided across the dark room. His strong, sensitive hands took down a rifle from a pair of mounted deer horns. He opened the door and stepped quietly outside. The moon was high. A light frost covered the smooth, beaten earth of the plaza. The halves of the pueblo on each side loomed up like great lumpy cliffs. There were no lights. Even the dogs were asleep. The young men had gone, and the stream sang alone over the frosty stones. He reached the corrals outside the town wall. Already freshly evergreen branches were stacked along the logs to keep out wind and snow. The sorrel mare smelled him and hushed her whinny. He bridled, blanketed, and saddled, led her outside to mount. She stepped daintily, distastefully through the cold stream. At one of the two great ash piles which still slowly rise upon hundreds of years' refuse, broken pottery and old bones, the mare hesitated, but not the rider. He pressed with his right knee and shook loose the reins. It was as if an invisible cord, the invisible hand upon his spirit, was pulling him to the rocky upper trail. Beautifully it all spread out below, the narrow valley ascending with the stream, great clumps of paling cotton woods, thickets of wild plum and chokecherry, corn milpas, and patches of open fields, but in the green-gray moonlight, trance-like and empty as a dream. The dry, pale cornstalks rattled in the wind. An overturned wicker basket left that afternoon by a group of women frightened away by a bear spilled chokeberries across the path. The man looked up into the clear dark sky. The deer were up. Some crows were calling. He listened attentively and rode on. The trail led upward over the sloping thigh of the mountain. It was rough and sharp with black volcanic tufa. The mare shied round a boulder, the one marked with strange signs of the old ones, a circle enclosing a dot, the imprint of a hand, a strange long-legged animal with a longer neck. The rider felt, as the mare, the lingering vibrations of the life that had never died but only lost its non-essential bodily form. On the shoulder of the mountain they stopped, the mare to stand heaving, with sweat trickling down withers and flanks. The rider to stare dreamily down at the low town wall enclosing the two communal mud pyramids like the halves of a nut meat within a broken shell, at the stream between them with its two bridges of square-hewn timbers flowing through the plaza, the conical outdoor ovens repeating in miniature the patterns of the mountain above, and at the ceremonial round kivas with ladders coming out the top. But here from high above and in the moonlight, it was all, but compressed and blended into a self-enclosed, impenetrable unity. The two opposite halves of the pueblo appeared like the fragments of a great headless drum, like the walls of an ancient kiva unearthed after 1,000 years. There was the same dead weight of earth once raised and slowly sinking back, the same indifferent non-resistance. A curious non-aliveness, not deadness, for nothing dies, but is something living with a slow serpent pulse and a perpetual dream of time. When the pull upon the man's spirit tightened, he rode on, through a thick dark forest of pine and spruce, to the mouth of a steep and narrow canyon. The trail was narrow. Brush scraped his legs and the hanging rifle. He lowered his bare head under outflung branches. It was high country now, perhaps 9,000 feet. The shadowy forest dropped behind. Between the tips of tall firs, he saw the pale sage desert stretching away beyond the river, and beyond it the hazy western range wherein lay the sun's house. But the gentle, insistent pull led him still higher. The canyon walls drew back, the stream poured whitely down the falls, rushed through small glades, spread into great still trout pools. Here the beavers worked. Felled trees across stream and trail. Others on each side stood smooth and straight, but with an X-shaped notch where they were being gnawed in two, and with a talus of fresh chips below. After a time, the man reined up his mare. He stared upward and ahead at the bare granite face of the mountain above timberline. It was calm, expressionless, stoical as his own. There, over the lower crest, the incurved bow, lay the sacred tribal lake, the little blue eye of faith, the deep turquoise lake of life. But now there was no pull upon him. He listened to the deep pulse of the mountain, and he felt it as one feels a drum which has been beating so long that he is no longer conscious of the mere sound. He listened to the pulse of his own blood. They beat together now in time, and he knew he was to go no farther. So he waited, sitting patiently on his mare, at the edge of a small clearing, hidden in the grove of tall, pale aspens. The clouds drifted on. The night people twinkled clearly again. Wind-old woman blew cold off the first ice above, rattling the pale brittle leaves which fell like flakes of snow. Still he did not stir. A shadow flitted from tree to tree-top. A deer bounded into the glade. It stood an instant nose forward, the petals of its ears up, then with a flick of its white tailpiece vanished into the brush. The man did not reach for his rifle. His hand lay heavily and calmly upon the neck of his mare. Still there was no sign. After a while he rode out into the clearing, looked around him, then dismounted and led his mare to the stream. 6 paces from the edge he suddenly whinnied and reared up on her hind legs. The man jerked her down with a powerful but steady hand. Before her front teeth touched the earth, the rifle in his other hand, he stood bent forward in a crouch, no longer trance-like but intensely aware. He heard a muffled moan. It came from a man lying in the shadow of a boulder. He was lying on one side, legs doubled up, arms outspread, his face to the ground. But even as the rider bent down, scratching a match with his thumbnail, the head rolled sideways, and there stared at him the face whose features were familiar but drained of color to a sallow yellow. "Martiniano," the rider called softly and clearly. "I have heard your call. I am come." As he dropped to his knees and slid a gentle calloused hand under the blood-dried head, the one answered, "Paleman, my friend, it is my head. It makes my blood water, my legs weak. I could crawl no farther." The voice was weak but calm, almost as steady as the black, fathomless eyes shining in the matchlight. Paleman built a tiny fire. With water from the stream he washed his friend's gashed head. With wet leaves and a dirty bandana he bound it. They smoked a cigarette in silence too heavily impregnated with mystery for empty words. Then Paleman called softly to his mount. "She is a strong mare, that you know. I will hold you on," he said simply. "The deer I killed," replied Martiniano. "You will get him first? Maybe half-mile back. You will see where I crawled the blood also. He is hid in the bushes. Those others, they rode fast away." A quick, sharp look passed between them. "Those white men, I say, they left me dead," added Martiniano. Paleman did not answer. On foot, leading the mare, he vanished into the darkness. Dawn was breaking over the mountains when they came down the trail, but down below dark still held between the 2 tall adobe cliffs. The faces of the cliffs were seamed with ladders reaching from ledge to ledge. Before the doors, facing the east, stood cardboard figures shrouded in shawls and blankets. On the highest housetops, 2 others robed in white took up their posts to stand or sit there till evening dusk. As the first beam of light struck across the well of darkness, all emptied their hands of cornmeal and spoke their prayers to the sun, coming out standing to his sacred place. Jets of pale blue smoke began to sprout from 150 chimneys. The plaza below awoke with life. Women waddling down to the stream balancing water jars and tin buckets on their blue-black heads. Children, naked and shivering, running after more faggots. Men returning from the corrals to stand in the front of ovens or against the sunny walls. Wrapped to the eyes in cheap cotton blankets, rolling corn-husk cigarettes, saying nothing, seeing all. It was the rhythm of Indian life, an unvarying, age-old pattern whose mutations changed regularly and simultaneously with the patterns of day and night.